Many people today seem really captivated by the supernatural. You definitely see it everywhere, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. It's woven into pop culture.
Yeah, horoscopes in magazines, tarot readings all over social media, even just, casual talk about Ouija boards.
Right, like it's just harmless fun.
Exactly. It feels like these practices are becoming way more mainstream, presented as maybe self-knowledge or just exploring things.
Spiritual exploration in a confusing world, perhaps.
But what if there's a deeper perspective, a more significant one? What if the stakes are actually higher?
That's the question, isn't it?
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a really specific source, a booklet called A Biblical Examination of Occult Practices, Understanding God's Prohibitions.
A very direct title.
It is. And our mission here is really to cut through the noise, pull out the key insights from this material, and help you understand the biblical warnings it highlights.
And the theology behind them.
Yes, and the spiritual dangers it talks about, getting to the core of what this source actually says.
And what's striking right from the start is how this material directly confronts that whole harmless fun idea.
It really does.
It presents a very clear counter-narrative. Any involvement is seen as a serious spiritual danger.
Not just slightly risky, but dangerous.
Right. And the authors stress this isn't about some arbitrary list of rules. It's, and I'm quoting here, a loving father protecting his children from spiritual harm and leading them in the path of life and truth.
So protection, not restriction, is the framing.
That's the perspective, yes. We're going to explore what the Bible, through this particular lens, reveals about why God forbids occultism.
Okay.
We'll look at divination, mediums, astrology, witchcraft, making images, all through this specific biblical framework presented in the booklet.
Right, let's dive in. First category, divination and fortune-telling. How does the source define divination exactly?
It defines it as seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means.
Okay, so that covers a lot, like reading tea leaves, tarot cards.
Crystal balls, even ancient practices like casting lots, things that might seem quite different on the surface.
Yeah, some feel almost quaint, others very modern. But what's the core problem the source identifies here? Why is this seeking discouraged?
Well, the material argues the Bible is remarkably consistent about condemning all forms of it.
All forms, no exceptions.
According to the source, no. It's viewed as more than just a mistake. It's seen as a direct rejection of God's sovereignty.
Rejecting God's sovereignty.
Meaning, you're essentially trying to bypass the Creator. You're turning to other spiritual sources for guidance instead of Him.
Okay.
And you see this throughout the Old Testament, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. These practices are explicitly called detestable.
Detestable. Strong word.
Very strong. And it's fascinating how the source connects this directly to God's judgment on the Canaanite nations.
Oh, so.
They were apparently heavily involved in these exact kinds of practices, and their rejection of God's authority through divination was, according to this booklet, a primary reason for their downfall.
Wow. So it shows how deeply opposed these practices are to God's design from this perspective.
Exactly. And why he wanted his people, Israel, to completely avoid them.
That really grounds it historically. It's not just abstract theology.
Yeah.
And the source gives another example, right? Balaam?
Yes. The story of Balaam in Numbers. It's a complex one. Here's a prophet, someone who seemingly could hear from God, but he was also willing to use divination for personal gain. The text even mentions him accepting a fee for divination.
So mixing genuine spiritual connection with essentially fortune-telling for profit.
Exactly. And the source uses this as a stark warning about the corrupting influence, how seeking supernatural knowledge for selfish reasons can go wrong, even for someone who should know better.
That's a powerful point. And then there's the New Testament example, too.
Right, in Acts. The slave girl who could predict the future.
Making money for her owners.
Yes, through a spirit. And Paul's response is crucial. He doesn't debate her predictions or try to use them.
What does he do?
He directly addresses the source. He commands the demonic spirit to leave her.
So confronting the root cause, not the symptom.
Precisely. So if even a prophet like Balaam could be swayed, and Paul dealt with it so directly, what's the fundamental vulnerability? Why do people fall for this, according to the source?
Yeah. What's the underlying issue?
The core insight here isn't just about rules. It's this idea that seeking future knowledge outside of God subtly undermines his authority in your life.
Undermines his authority.
Yeah, the source explains why it's offensive. It's trying to bypass God. It's a kind of spiritual pride, really, a lack of trust in his plan for you.
A lack of trust. That seems key.
It is. And crucially, the booklet states, it opens the door to demonic deception.
Okay, there's that door idea again.
Right. The spirits providing information through these methods this material clarifies are not from God. Their aim is ultimately to deceive, to lead you into spiritual bondage.
So the information might even seem accurate sometimes, but the source is deceptive.
That's the warning. The alternative presented for believers is, well, straightforward. Trust in a loving Heavenly Father, rely on His Word, the Bible.
Which Psalm 119 calls a lamp to our feet.
And a light to our path, exactly. And rely on the Holy Spirit, who John 16 says guides us into all truth. Those are the approved channels, so to speak.
Okay, so seeking future knowledge outside God is out because it bypasses Him and opens that door. What about trying to connect with the past? Specifically, contacting the dead.
Another area people turn to for answers or comfort?
Definitely. How does the source address this?
With unequivocal clarity. It condemns the practice outright, identifying it as necromancy.
Necromancy. Sounds pretty serious.
And the biblical warnings cited are severe. Leviticus 19. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them.
Defiled. What does that mean here? Spiritual contamination.
That's exactly the sense.
Yep.
A deep spiritual danger. And Leviticus 20 goes further. God says, He'll set my face against those who follow mediums and will cut them off.
Cut off from the community.
Or from God himself.
Or
the implication is profound separation. And the source even points out that the penalty in ancient Israel was death.
wow. Okay, that definitely underscores the seriousness.
It shows the gravity of transgressing God's established order in this way.
It makes you think about that famous story, King Saul and the Witch of Endor. He was desperate, right? God wasn't answering him.
Exactly. 1 Samuel 28. Saul is desperate. God is silent. So he seeks out this medium. It's perhaps the most well-known biblical account related to this.
How does the source interpret that story? Does it support the idea of contacting the dead?
Quite the opposite, actually. The material points out something interesting. The medium herself was shocked when Samuel actually appeared.
Really? Why? Wasn't that her job?
It suggests this wasn't a normal occurrence she could just conjure up on demand. And crucially, what Samuel delivered wasn't comfort.
No. What was it?
A message of impending doom. Judgment. He predicted Saul's death in battle the very next day.
Not exactly the reassuring message people usually hope for from a medium.
Not at all. The source uses this to illustrate the folly and danger of the practice. Even if some information seems to come through, it might not be what you expect, and it doesn't negate the prohibition or the danger.
So this raises that crucial question again. Why is it so dangerous, according to this source? If it wasn't really Samuel what was being contacted.
The source is very direct here. It states the spirits contacted are not the spirits of the dead, but are demonic spirits masquerading as them.
Masquerading. Pretending.
Yes. It points to passages like Luke 16 talking about a great chasm fixed between the living and the dead, suggesting it's impassable.
So communication isn't possible.
According to this view, no. These demonic entities, the material explains, use limited knowledge, maybe things they observed when the person was alive, to deceive.
To create a false sense of connection.
Exactly. Leading people into spiritual bondage while actually working against their true spiritual well-being.
What about related practices, like praying to saints or deceased loved ones?
The source touches on that too, viewing it as another form of forbidden necromancy, essentially trying to mediate through the dead.
And the alternative?
It highlights 1 Timothy 2.5. For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Christ Jesus.
So Christ is the only mediator.
That's the emphasis. Any other attempt at mediation, especially involving the dead, is seen as spiritually problematic and forbidden.
Okay, so we've covered seeking future knowledge and trying to contact the dead. Let's shift gears to consulting the stars, astrology, horoscopes. These often feel much lighter, almost like entertainment.
Definitely perceived that way by many. A bit of fun, a quirky interest.
But what does the source actually say about them? Is it just as serious?
Unequivocally, yes. It condemns them just as strongly, calling them a form of idolatry and a rejection of God's sovereignty.
Idolatry. How so?
It traces astrology's roots back to ancient Babylon, where stars and planets weren't just guides, they were worshipped as gods. The host of heaven, as the Bible calls them.
Okay, so the practice itself originated in worship of created things.
Precisely. And the Bible condemns this consistently. Deuteronomy 4 warns directly against bowing down to the sun, the moon, and the stars. The material frames this using Romans 1, worshiping the creature rather than the creator.
Fundamental theological error.
A profound one, making it a form of idolatry God finds detestable. And sadly, the source notes, even Israel fell into this sin historically.
Right, you see references in Kings.
Yes, highlighting how pervasive this temptation was even for God's own people. King Manasseh, for example, infamous for bowing down to the starry hosts.
It really brings that Isaiah passage to mind, chapter 47, where he basically mocks Babylon's astrologers.
Yes, he challenges them, saying their predictions are useless, that the stars they consult cannot even save themselves from the power of the flame. It's quite scathing.
So what's the danger for us today, according to the source, beyond the historical idolatry?
That's exactly the point the source makes. The danger isn't just ancient ritual, it's the underlying spiritual framework. Firstly, it's still seeking knowledge from a source other than God, rejecting his unique sovereignty over your life and future.
Same core issue as divination.
Yes. And maybe more subtly, it promotes a kind of fatalistic worldview.
Meaning our lives are just dictated by the stars.
Pretty much. Which contradicts the biblical view of human responsibility, free will, and God's active providence. It can lead to helplessness, a feeling that you're not in control, and again, opens you to spiritual deception.
Because you're looking to the creation, not the creator.
Exactly. The alternative, the source keeps reminding us, is that relationship with the God who made the stars, relying on his word and his spirit for guidance, looking to him.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've looked at seeking knowledge. Now, what about practices aimed at, let's say, more direct manipulation?
Yeah.
Witchcraft and sorcery, how are those defined here?
The material defines these as using spiritual power to manipulate people or circumstances.
Through things like spells, potions, rituals.
Yes. And crucially, these are seen as rebellion against God and an attempt to usurp his power.
Usurping God's power. That's a strong claim.
It is. Deuteronomy 18 mentions ancient Hebrew terms for this kashaf, meaning to bewitch or practice black magic. A mushanan, practicing soothsaying. These aren't new concepts.
And in the New Testament?
Galatians 5 lists witchcraft among the acts of the sinful nature. Interestingly, the Greek word is pharmakia.
Pharmakia. Sounds like pharmacy.
Exactly. It highlights the ancient connection between potions, drugs, and magical practices, and the consequence mentioned in Galatians is severe. Those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God.
Wow. Exclusion.
Yes. And the book of Revelation also warns against magic arts, using that same word, pharmakeia, linking it to exclusion from God's kingdom.
This makes me think of something very common today. The Ouija board. Lots of people see it as just a game, maybe a bit spooky fun at sleepovers.
Definitely seen that way. But the source views its perceived purpose, communicating with spirits, very seriously.
So why is it considered so dangerous, according to this booklet?
It brings back that core warning we've heard before. It's not the dead you're contacting.
It's the masquerading demonic spirits again.
That's the assertion. Using an Ouija board, the source warns, is like opening a door to the demonic realm.
There's that door metaphor again, leading to
Potential consequences like fear, anxiety, depression, even what the source calls demonic oppression. It's framed as far more than a game. It's a spiritual engagement with potentially harmful forces.
So the underlying issue is the rebellion, trying to grab power.
Yes. Witchcraft, in all its forms, is presented as a direct rebellion against God, an attempt to seize power that belongs only to him. And the power you do access, the source argues, isn't neutral. It's from the demonic realm, opening you to their influence.
And the alternative here?
Trusting God's power, his omnipotence, his promise in Romans 8 to work all things together for our good. Relying on his word and his spirit, not trying to manipulate things yourself through forbidden means.
Okay, so manipulation is out. What about something seemingly less active, like simply representing God through images, making idols?
Right, moving from manipulating power to potentially misrepresenting God himself.
What's the fundamental command here that the source points to?
It goes right back to the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything.
In heaven above or on the earth beneath?
Or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. It's a core prohibition.
And the source says this isn't just about worshiping, say, Baal or other gods.
Exactly. It explains this also applies to attempts to worship the true God through images.
Why, if the intention is good?
Because, the source argues, any physical image will inevitably be a misrepresentation of him. God is infinite, spirit invisible, How can a finite created object accurately depict him? It can't.
It limits him.
It inevitably limits and distorts our understanding.
The classic example must be the golden calf, right? Exodus 32.
The absolute classic example. The Israelites weren't necessarily trying to worship a different god initially. They told Aaron, make us gods who will go before us. They seemed to want to worship Yahweh, but through this tangible, visible calf,
A direct violation.
a direct violation of the commandment they'd just received, which provoked God's righteous anger, as the text says.
So connecting this to the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
what are the dangers of idolatry the source highlights, beyond just breaking a rule?
Well, first, as you said, it misrepresents God, leading to a warped understanding. Second, it can foster a false sense of security.
How so?
People start thinking they can somehow control or manipulate God through the image they've made. It puts the worshiper in charge, in a way.
Instead of God being in charge.
Precisely. And third, critically, the material warns again that it opens the door to demonic influence. It cites 1 Corinthians 10. The sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. The idea is that behind every idol, there's a demonic reality.
Wow, that's a sobering thought. What about images of Christ, though? Many traditions use them.
The source addresses that argument directly. It applies the same core principles. We don't actually know what Jesus looked like physically. Any image is speculation. And the danger remains, you risk worshiping the image rather than the person.
Focusing on the representation instead of the reality.
Exactly. The emphasis, the source reminds us, should be on worshiping God in spirit and in truth, as Jesus told the woman at the well in John 4. That requires a direct, unmediated spiritual connection, not a physical image.
Okay, we've covered a lot of specific practices: divination, necromancy, astrology, witchcraft, idolatry. What's the common thread tying all these warnings together? You mentioned the spiritual realm earlier.
Yes, that's foundational to the whole perspective in this booklet. It emphasizes that the Bible reveals a real, active spiritual world all around us. It's not just us and God.
What does that world include?
According to the biblical view presented here, it includes both holy angels serving God and fallen angels, demons, who are described as actively working to deceive and to destroy humanity.
Actively working against us.
That's the picture painted. It's not an abstract idea. It's presented as a vibrant and, frankly, dangerous reality.
The source mentions an example.
Yes, it gives that chilling glimpse from the Gospels. Mark, Luke, Matthew all record it. The demon-possessed man in the region of the Gerasenes.
The one called Legion.
That's him. Jesus asks the demon its name, and the reply is, "My name is Legion, for we are many," indicating a vast number, a collective force with hostile intent.
And the pigs.
Right. The destructive power is shown so dramatically when Jesus allows them to enter a herd of pigs, about 2,000, Mark says, and they immediately rush down the bank into the lake and drown. It's a stark illustration.
And Satan's role in all this?
The source identifies him, citing John 8 as the father of lies. Deception is his primary weapon. 2 Corinthians 11 even says he masquerades as an angel of light.
Meaning evil doesn't always look evil. It can look appealing.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Sophisticated, attractive even. That's part of the danger.
So this all points towards what? Spiritual warfare.
Exactly. That's the framework. Ephesians 6.12 is key here. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms.
It's a battle.
The spiritual battle. And the source reminds us of the defense provided. The full armor of God described right after that passage in Ephesians: faith, truth, righteousness. These are spiritual weapons for a spiritual fight.
So tying it all back to the occult practices we discussed, what's the practical implication?
The critical warning repeated throughout this material is that any dabbling in the occult, even the things that seem minor or casual, is like opening a door to the demonic realm.
That door metaphor again.
Yeah.
It's a deliberate invitation.
It's presented as an active invitation, yes. Making yourself vulnerable to these evil spirits and their deception, the consistent message is that God's prohibitions aren't arbitrary.
They're for protection.
God, in his love and wisdom, has forbidden these things for our protection. That's the refrain. He's setting boundaries to safeguard our spiritual well-being from very real, unseen dangers.
Wow. Okay, that's been quite a journey through this source material. We've definitely seen a consistent, very strong message about all these different occult practices.
Yes, from divination and spiritism right through to astrology, witchcraft, and even idol worship.
And the biblical reasons given for why they're prohibited. If we were to boil down the key takeaways from this booklet.
I think there are a few core ones. First, all these practices are fundamentally presented as a form of idolatry, turning away from God to seek answers, power, or guidance
And
somewhere else.
seeking outside the designated source.
Second, the reality of the spiritual realm. It's active. It includes dangerous, deceptive, evil spirits. That's not fantasy, according to this view.
Okay, what else?
Third, that God's prohibitions aren't random rules. They're framed consistently as protective measures born out of love and wisdom for your good.
Protection, not punishment, as the primary motive.
That's the perspective offered. And finally, the sufficiency and exclusivity of Jesus Christ as our only mediator, our only true source of hope and guidance. That 1 Timothy 2 verse again.
It's easy, though, especially today, to maybe dismiss some of this, isn't it? You see horoscopes, tarot cards presented so casually, like harmless fun.
That modern allure is powerful. It normalizes things that this source views very differently.
So what's the final challenge or warning from the source?
It emphasizes the need for Christians to be discerning and vigilant. It warns that seemingly light forms of the occult can absolutely become a gateway to deeper involvement.
A slippery slope kind of idea.
Perhaps. Opening doors you might not realize you're opening. And this really does raise an important question for you, the listener, to consider.
Yeah.
In a world that's constantly pushing all sorts of spiritual guidance, different paths to self-discovery, where are you actually seeking your answers? Where are you placing your hope, your trust for protection?
That's a challenging question.
Does the appeal of maybe getting quick insights or that feeling of self-discovery from these other sources, does that outweigh the potential deeper implications this material raises about inviting potentially harmful spiritual influences into your life?
Something to really reflect on.
Definitely. And remember that concluding thought the source offers, drawing from Romans 12, let us not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but let us be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Ultimately, the call is to trust the God who holds the future, rather than trying to uncover or manipulate it through means he has, according to the source, forbidden for your own good.
And on that note, we encourage you to continue exploring, learning, and diving deep into stories that inspire and challenge you. Until next time.